And we hadn't had any nutrient density testing done on it, so eat at your own peril there. I'm Josh Teague, running T Farms. Me and my wife Brandy, along with our two 6-year-old twin boys, head up the operation. We manage about 1,000 acres in Iredell County, about 500 of it's in grazing management, grazable. So it's kind of like this farm here. We're spread out with that grass all over the whole thing. So I'm just gonna, Ben kind of asked me to talk about, we've transitioned a lot of land as we've been started, some from crop production, some from hay production, some that was in traditional perennial pasture bases with very conventional management over the years. And I have a lot of people reach out a lot of times. They have some unrealistic expectations, or they don't know what to expect, and I'm going on this journey along with everybody else. But I can point a little bit at some of the things we've seen as we've transitioned a lot of different types of land into a perennial grazing system, which is what we do. We don't do any cropping. We don't do any hay production anymore. We graze 365 days a year, with the exception if we have some really inclement weather or something. So that is kind of what we got going. And I'm going to go through a couple little points here just to give a little context to kind of the way we manage. So always, what's needed to improve the land and its appropriate management. Management is the key to all of this stuff as we've seen it. And we try to usually make our management decisions through the context of maximum sustainable, ecological, and economical profit per acre. Kind of a mouthful there, but if we're going to come out here and raise healthy food and we're going to regenerate the land, we can only do that if we're able to stay on the land. So we have to be profitable. So it don't matter if we can grow the most nutrient-dense food that anybody's ever put into their mouth. If we can't make a profit when we're doing that, we can't stay in business, and we're going to get kicked off the land, and it's going to do whatever it might do. So we have to be profitable, and we make our decisions through not only, like I said, monetary profitability, but ecological profitability. So we're always looking at everything. Not necessarily is it the most monetarily profitable, but can it be simultaneously economical and ecological? So a couple of points here. I'm just going to be talking mostly about grazing management and what the land looks like today. But there's always many more things that you should consider than what I'm going to talk about today, because we just don't have time. So marketing, quality of life, personal relationships, the wants and needs of your landowners. If you're renting land, you got to keep your landowners happy. And that's the main reason that I started this kind of YouTube series, is people who are going out and trying to rent land and they're going to maybe put it into regenerative management. They need to be upfront and very clear with their landowners what that might look like, because it's probably going to look a good bit different than a conventional management. So be upfront with them. Don't, it's not, if they're expecting it to be sprayed with herbicides 10 times a year and mowed and look like a golf course, and then you come in there and you set aside part of the farm to stockpile to graze your livestock on in the winter, you might have some landowners blowing your phone up saying, "Whoa, what's going on here?" So you need to be upfront with them on the front end as you're going into that. So what I found is that we realize most of the soil improvement happens when the animals are not present grazing. When perennial plants in particular over annuals are allowed to grow or stockpile for an extended period of time. That's where we've seen the biggest returns in regards to soil improvement. But we also got to understand that over-resting of those plants can have negative effects. So we got to always be balancing that. Livestock. We got to realize that cattle or sheep, whatever you may be grazing, that through our context, they have a dual purpose. So they have to improve the land that they graze on, and they have to efficiently convert grass to beef, to milk, to wool, to lamb, whatever it is that you might be selling. And breeding and management of your livestock should be made through that context. They have to improve the land. They have to efficiently convert grass to a sellable product. In regards to cattle and to a large degree sheep, as I understand, we don't graze any sheep, just cattle. But I can definitely speak to the fact that these type of cattle are not readily available. It takes a highly adapted genotype is essential to maximize land improvement and your profitability, and you will probably have to seek them out from other people or more likely breed your own. So I always like to put that in there as a caveat. With unadapted animals, your progress is going to be slower because you just simply can't graze in a manner that'll maximize land improvement. That's been that's what we found to be true. And you should always keep the health and body condition of your animals up paramount in front. That goes back to profitability. If you've got a lot of sick animals because they're not adapted to your management or your forage, or you've got a lot of thin animals, they're not going to be productive, you're not going to make money, you're going to go out of business. So that is what we know, what we found that we need to build soil is we need long recovery periods to maximize the soil improvement, and we need to manage our grazing so that we minimize overgrazing and over-resting of plants, and we need to manage our grazing to ensure that we maintain our livestock in good body condition at all times. So I wanted to get that out there as quick as I could because like I said, it's just kind of a short session. But all those things are paramount that we found when you're trying to regenerate land profitably. And that's an important thing is to keep a focus on profitability so that we can make these improvements in the nutrient density of our foods as Dan was talking about, and make improvements in our land and our communities and everything else. So what I've noticed, I'll give you a couple examples here of what some land might look like during the regeneration process that we've seen. You know, so your starting point, is it perennial pasture? Is it crop production? You know, coming from a high input pasture where they've used a whole lot of fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, etc. And so here's a couple I can talk to you a little bit about what we've seen. So that's a perennial pasture right there that was fertility was extremely poor on, overgrazed for many years, and we come in and we just allowed it to rest for a whole growing season, build up as much biomass as we could, and we brought the cows in and grazed it off. You can see there's a ton of dog fennel in it. There is actually a pretty good understory of grass in it, but we just know we need to let those roots do their work, let that biomass up. We come in here and graze that off with the cattle, and that's something that we just did this past year. It takes longer on fields like that have very poor fertility. Could probably benefit from a lime application just to kind of get stuff kicked off, but I doubt we do that. We don't use any fertilized herbicides, pesticides. We're a functionally organic farm. We're not certified, but we don't do anything except manage our grazing. We have transitioned a good bit of row crop. We're still in the process of transitioning that. Come in with some annuals, some ryegrass, sorghum Sudan, did some crop mixes, raised crazy mix and stuff. But we're now just allowing those. We've stopped that 2 years ago, and we're just giving longer rests, grazing it off, and now we're seeing a nice transition over into more perennial grasses and all. But it can get pretty ugly in the start. That's a picture. You can see a lot of weeds, a lot of annual grasses. If you let those go, that's what I'm talking about. If you're renting land, you need to be up front. We're actually letting this about 20 acres go through the winter like that because we've started seeing some quail that we haven't seen in forever, and we had that set aside, and turns out that quail thrive on that type of stuff. So we're going to let them have it this winter, and we'll come back in there next spring and graze it off. So this would be what I would call a high input. This is on our farm. My cows are actually grazing right there today. I just took that picture about 3 days ago. But that was, they used a lot of poultry litter, which we've had control of this farm now for about 3 years. A lot of poultry litter. They did spray some herbicides in the past. I actually had the farm right on the other side of the fence, so I kind of knew what was going on over there. And it's still pretty productive, but if you'll notice there, it's almost a monoculture of Kentucky 31 fescue. It's hardly there's not anything else in there. So we will see. I can show you on another slide coming up here what that this particular paddock here where I took this picture was predominantly a Kentucky 31 fescue paddock down in the bottom, and with good management, we've been able to really get that transitioned over to some really nice. I mean, that's Eastern Gamma there. There's all kinds of clovers. There's so much diversity there. I don't even know. It'd take me forever to count the number of different plant species that's in a square yard. But so it is possible. We've seen it happen time and again, but that's what I said. We got maximum diversity, very tight plant density, highly functional ecosystem. And when you walk in there, there's just every kind of insect, bugs, spiders. I mean, it's crazy, birds. So we think we're tracking in the right direction, when you see all that life. So some of the main takeaways that we've seen, the prior treatment or management of the land is going to decide what that regeneration looks like. And I don't have any way to tell you. I can give you some examples of what we've seen. But we have seen the land respond the quickest is perennial pastures. If they've been overgrazed, and you just get some good rest and recovery and graze cycles on them, they'll respond pretty quickly, and you can have something that looks good pretty quickly. High inputs, crop production, all that, those areas are going to look uglier longer till they get the soil straightened out and the soil life starts functioning better. Most of those high inputs kind of sterilize the soil, I feel like, to a certain degree. I think that's why we see the quicker transition in like a perennial pasture base. So we would always start with long rest periods on our least productive ground. When we come in, if we've got a new farm and we look at the fields and we say, well, you can tell this from here, it just doesn't look great. That'd be one we'd set aside and just let it grow all growing season if possible and come in and graze it off and then give it another rest period. So that's what we try to do. Like I said, you gotta graze this off in our environment here, which we just live about an hour and a half from here. That's going to have to be done annually. Of course, if you're in a desert, you might do that every 18 months or something. But we got to remove that biomass so that we don't shade the plants out. Too much biomass, the plants get up, fall over, they shade themselves out. Your plant spacing starts spreading out. So we got to minimize that. We need to let them grow a long time, but then we also need to get them removed, get them through the cow, and move on and give them a recovery. And like I said, diversity is not always going to look like what you think it will. So make your landowners aware of your practices if you're renting or leasing, what they might look like, and be very clear why you're doing what you're doing. There's no need to try to dance around that point. Be up front with them if you're trying to rent land. And I always like to put this out here, regenerative management, is not miraculously going to make you drought proof. If it doesn't rain, you don't grow grass. It can make you more resilient, at times. You're not automatically going to make you profitable. Oh, I've done messed up. and you're not going to immediately be able to carry 3 or 4 times more animals than before, and you're not going to immediately be able to graze year-round if you're normally feeding a ton of hay all winter long. But what it can do is make you more resilient to drought and extreme weather in time, and it can increase your potential for profits due to lower inputs and improving land base. And you can increase your carrying capacity and stocking rate substantially over time as your land and genetics improve, but you have to increase that carrying capacity before you increase your stocking rate. There's no way you can make it work if you just have more animals than you have grass. And you can eliminate or greatly reduce winter feeding in time as you continue to improve your grazing and your cattle. So with that, I don't know how I'm doing on time. Good. I'll take any questions anybody has.
Saying your system is for 2 years you will overseed it with stuff and then not put it in, or are you saying you did it for 2 years and decided, hey, row crop transition, we're just not going to overseed anything anymore?
Yeah, so when we actually bought a piece of land that had soybeans on it when we bought it, and the deal was, they could get their soybeans off of it. So by the time they cut their beans, it was they was late getting their beans cut that year, so it was too late to. I would have probably tried to have seeded it into perennial pasture then. But we ended up doing some ryegrass and some sorghum Sudan and some ryegrass. We kind of got in an annual cycle there, and we just found that annuals are fantastic when they're fantastic. There's always a chance for crop failure or something like that. We had some years we'd drill some sorghum Sudan. We didn't get any rain. You get no available forage out of it hardly, and you've spent a lot of money drilling this stuff in. So we just started walking it back. We actually did that for about 4 or 5 years. And we just started walking it back as we started getting more like volunteer crabgrass and that type of stuff coming in. And then finally we got to a point where we could get pretty good forage on it without doing anything. And at that point we've quit and we've started stretching out the rest periods on it. Now we're seeing a lot more warm season grasses, perennial grasses coming in there. Also, we was able to rent another farm, and that we was fully stocked when we was doing that, so we needed that forage to keep. Right now, I've got a little bit of a luxury by renting this other farm. I've got more grass than I've got cows. So that's given me a chance here to transition this over without taking a financial hit, without having to sell cows. We could do it on the land that we had, but I needed to keep it in some type of production, so renting this other farm allowed me a little bit of flexibility there to let that express itself. Well, so it's going to depend on what went on there first, what kind of farmer you had in front of you. If it's been, saying no-till crop production and they've really, been on top of their herbicide program and all that, there's the latent seed bank is you're not going to have anything to graze there probably for several years. I mean, you'll get some germination on some stuff here and there, but I would definitely recommend that if you're going to try to graze that, do that. You're going to have to seed something or you're not going to have anything. There'll be a little bit of something, but it's not going to be enough to get anything out of it. Yes, sir.
Thank you for sharing with us today. Thinking about Iredell County, what are some of your practices or you work with that protect or promote your land, your practices from development, from big fish?
Good, gracious. Sorry about that.
No problem.
I thought I had it silenced. Now, say that again. Sorry.
So thinking about where your farm is in Iredell County, what kind of practices or who do you work with to promote and protect your land and your practices?
Well, I mean, so we've partnered with NRCS to do a lot of, we've excluded at this point we just finished up all the exclusion fencing on the new farm. We've put in, waters and that type of deal. I don't know how many miles of fence we've built about 80,000 feet of fence this year. So I don't know, but we own part of the land, and part of the land that we lease is actually in a trust. So they've got it protected that way. It's a family trust. So there definitely needs to be something done, because we sure are feeling development pressure all around us, and it drives the price of land way up. It'd be extremely hard to pay for it farming. So not impossible, but you got to keep an eye on profitability for sure. Do what?
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Do you have any idea, not asking for your prices or costs, but the comparison of what you're paying for lease versus what the government's giving for CRP?
I don't know what the government's paying for CRP, so I don't know that answer. We pay the high side of the county average for grazing land, and we generally I won't even take a lease unless we can get it for 10 years, usually, because in general we're going to come in and put a bunch of infrastructure, and a lot of the times when we get the chance to rent a farm, it's a farm that's sort of run down. I always tell people, I think that's part of if you're in the regenerative agriculture, you're usually going to get one that everybody else is they've got all they can get out of it. The fences are in bad shape. They've got to where they can't keep their cows in, and they're leasing it. There's a lot of these farms are up for lease, and so they've kind of at that point. And I see that I must be out of time back here. So, all right. I didn't. So currently we can run about 1,000. So we're a birth to harvest grass-fed beef operation. So we have the animal from the day it's born till it either goes into our cow herd as breeding stock, or if it goes on through our process at between 24 and 30 months old to this hamburger that you're going to eat over here. So it's a little bit hard to compare, like most people would say, a cow-calf pair, because we've got cows, calves, yearlings, finishing animals. So we just try to break it down to add the total weight of the herd up and divide it by 1,000 pounds, which comes out to a standard animal unit is what they call it. So we can run 1,000 pounds of live animal weight with 365-day grazing on about 1 acre and a third. So for every 1,000 pounds that we run, it takes us 1 acre and a third to do that with 365. Our NRCS recommended stocking rate for our area for 365-day grazing is 2.5 acres. So we're essentially running at double the stocking rate of NRCS recommendations. Just slightly under double, but very close. I think we can get to 1 acre per 1,000. That's kind of my goal, first goal. We get there, we'll see what we can do from there. But we're getting close. We can harvest that much on some of our better ground, but across our whole farm, we're just not there yet. We can average about 300 cow days to the acre, across the whole farm, and you got to get to 365 to do one per acre. So, anybody else? Now Ben's coming up here. I know. I was going to say one thing about Dan. I was kind of whining, about having to get in the car and drive down here this morning, and then I hear his travel scenario. So I was like, I don't really have anything to whine about. And I will agree as far as he said they set the bar pretty low. The soil health did when they asked me to speak after that guy there. So I wanted to get that in there, but. Thank y'all, and I'll be around the rest of the day if anybody happens to have any questions.